if the streams of this river become weakened, if they stop flowing, what will naturally happen is that the flow of this river will not be as strong. The complete ecosystem around here will not be as rich as it is today. And that's exactly what is happening in the .NET space when we see .NET open source projects, the major ones, becoming commercial, stopping to evolve, becoming abandoned, and all of this is weakening the .NET ecosystem, the complete .NET space. So there's something that needs to be done here. So in this video, I want to go from the history to how we got here, and potentially other worlds where we can read from information in order to try to improve and get out of here. Because I'm concerned about the future of .NET when we see these things happening so frequently. So let's go back to the past. In 2006, I was a .NET developer working in VB.NET. Then quickly I moved to C#. And at the time, we didn't have something like NuGet. Okay? Installing a package was not a thing. So no one was looking for NuGet packages, no one was looking for open source, we didn't have GitHub. So it was a completely different world. To be honest, it was not perceived as something safe, bringing code from the outside in. So most companies only relied on things available at the Microsoft space. That was the common way to approach code. And that is also based on that idea that many still have, that when you get into the .NET space, you get into the Microsoft space, you are locked in. That is something that, luckily, in the past few years, has changed a lot. Okay? With .NET becoming open source, with all of those things, the world is completely different for us. But at the time, it was not. It was quite common to see someone like a CTO saying, no, we don't want to bring that external dependency because it's not made by Microsoft, we don't trust it. Unless it was something made by another major provider, something like Telerik or any type of UI components usually, those were the things that we were bringing in for a simple reason. Because they were too hard to build, we didn't have design skills, so it was a good compromise. We could trust that vendor, so let's do it. But most of the things, those small things, we didn't do it. Okay? If it was not part of Microsoft, we didn't do it. Also, because it was extremely hard to install and use something. Okay? We had something like the global assembly something to load the assemblies. I already don't remember the name of the things, but it was painful, to be honest, to register something, to trust something, to import something. Luckily, we got to a point where we have NuGet. We can install a NuGet package and we quickly have anything that we want available. And if we combine that with GitHub, everything starts changing extremely fast. Because before GitHub, we were using something like CodePlex, for example, and it was better than we used to have in 2006, but to be honest, I'm not sure if in 2006 CodePlex was around already, maybe it was, but the feeling when you had only CodePlex was kind of like a source code repository that you would go there, you would try to understand how it works, but then to install it, it would be painful. Good news, we have NuGet packages and things become faster, we speed up everything, and that led to amazing things, to amazing frameworks, amazing libraries, and we install every single thing from complex stuff to things that are extremely simple and we could install it ourselves. We could do it ourselves. But this is a different world, it's not the same world from the past. And the cool thing is that then Microsoft takes .NET to .NET Core. With that we know what happened, .NET becomes open source. There's still some issues there around things like the debugger, you know it. But even then, it's a better world than we used to have. And it's sad to see that we are getting to a point where the history will repeat once again. That usually happens in every single thing in the world. So we improve, but then we go back to the beginning because a given reason pushes us back to the beginning. And that is happening because the open source model is extremely complex. So that takes us to how we got here. With all this simplification on building something, hosting it on GitHub, anyone can contribute. I can build a package on a pipeline, push it to NuGet, and now any .NET developer can use it. With that extremely simplification, what happens is that everyone starts building stuff. We start bringing a lot of things in. And some of those projects become important dependencies in this ecosystem, in this space. We have things like Identity Server that is extremely complex, and luckily someone took the time to understand it, to read the specifications, to build something solid that we can trust around it, and eventually they decide to take it to commercial, to build a product, to build a company around it. Okay, that's fair. But also we have small things like small libraries, things like Fluent Assertions, things like Mediator, small things that, by the simple fact that they are libraries, it's quite hard to see a path forward that brings a commercial use. And here is where we have seen different approaches. We have seen examples where things went extremely wrong, like the example of Mock, the mocking library, where things were a bit undercovered and we got trust issues nowadays. Then we moved to other things like, for example, Fluent Assertions becoming commercial from one day to the other, and no one knew it that was coming. And most recently, we have the example, for example, of Mediator and what's the other one regarding Mediator? Automapper. Jimmy is doing something that, thanks God, he's doing it. It's something that I'm really happy on seeing that is being extremely open, what is according to the spirit of open source, about what he plans to do, because he's explaining that this is not sustainable nowadays in its reality, and he needs to take the project to commercial, but he still doesn't know how he will be doing it. What is fair? It's giving an opportunity to the community to also express what the community is thinking about it. And that is the way of doing it. But these things are happening, and if we think about them, they are a consequence of the problems of open source. When you have individuals like Jimmy, that maybe he was taking advantage of the work that he was doing professionally, and his company was supporting him to do it, and he was working into open source projects, but it was supported mainly through his company. Now, after a few years, it will become harder. We marry, we have kids, we have other responsibilities. We get tired of taking some comments that are not fair, to be honest. People are not that well educated on the internet, unfortunately, and there's a culture of demanding instead of understanding what is open source. So for those projects that are mostly led by individuals, that even if they have a lot of contributors, they tend to have one or two people that are the key elements, the key contributors, those projects are in trouble usually, because it's something that in a few years it might come, because our life keeps changing, and I completely understand why this thing is happening. But if it's a library like those, the path forward might be a bit hard, because it's hard to see someone paying for a license, for example, for a yearly license for Mediator, for example. I don't see how can we get out of there. How can someone like Jimmy build a business around it, even if it was something like Mediator Pro with other features? Maybe there's a chance to go through there, but it's hard. It's hard to see someone paying him for consulting because of those libraries. It's hard as well. When we talk about frameworks, or we talk about something like Identity Server, it's easier to build something extra of the free stuff, of the open source stuff. So building a company on top of the open source space, that becomes easier. So it's natural that we came here. And many would say that, okay, the solution to this might be companies taking care of open source. It might be, because we have good examples of that working out. For example, we have Meta or Facebook leading a lot of initiatives on the JavaScript space, for example, with React and things like that. We have the good examples of Google doing that for a long time. There's many use cases of that. But eventually that can lead to a point where the only main providers of open source are those huge companies. Because let me tell you that from a personal experience, it's extremely hard to bring a culture of open source to inside of a company, even to inside of a big company. Because most of the organization is looking for the product, is looking for their goals, their KPIs, and now we try to bring a culture that can be heavily influenced from the things that are happening outside. Okay? We want to accept feedback, we want to accept contributions, we want to react to the issues, and that is hard. It's hard to build a culture where people are happy with that, people are fine with that. So it's hard to see a way to get out of here only focused on the companies and ignoring the individuals. Because if for those small projects like Mediator, for example, if we got here, it's a sign that even being a huge thing and even having a lot of contributors, most of the work still relies on Jimmy. Otherwise, if it was something that didn't take him too much time to keep it running, to keep it evolving, he wouldn't come to this point. I don't feel from that blog post that is a question of wanting money, okay? Jimmy can earn money other ways, for sure. He's an extremely talented individual, extremely famous in our space. Everyone loves him. I can see when I go to a conference, his rooms are always packed of true fans. So it's not a question of money in this case. It's a question of sustainability. Okay? It's about, you get to a point in your life and you look to the things that you are doing, and you have a family, you have kids, you have other things that you enjoy to do. And now you are putting so much effort on something, and often no one is showing you that value, that thing. They are only demanding, and that's hard. So that takes us to the question of how do we get out of here? I obviously don't have an answer for that. I don't have the way, the key to unlock the future. But one thing I know what used to be .NET when we only rely on Microsoft. And I would prefer to not get to that point, to be honest. But I also feel that Microsoft didn't took care of this ecosystem that grew out of the open source movement, grew out of GitHub and NuGet. It's not that they don't care. There's programs in place. There's ways to support the authors. There's the Microsoft MVP program. But there's something more that needs to be done. For example, we have the .NET Foundation that could be doing more to support this type of projects. Okay? They have mechanisms in place, but I feel that there's something more to be done. There's maybe financial support. And I honestly believe that it's extremely important for the future of .NET that Microsoft takes an action today to bring this community back to life, okay? Because we are in the verge of everyone becoming afraid of getting into .NET because of seeing these things. If you are a CTO and you keep seeing things getting into the backlog to replace a library, to replace a framework because that library became commercial, or requests to start paying for a given thing that you adopted 5 years ago, and now it's so hard to replace, and you take a lot of value out of it, eventually you will start asking, why do I keep on this ecosystem? And if you need to build something new, if you need to pivot to a different thing, eventually you will start looking for another world, another framework to use, another language. And that is something that I would love to see us trying to avoid. And I feel that Microsoft has a role on that. Because one of the main reasons for Microsoft to support .NET, in my opinion, nowadays, so if we look into the business model of Microsoft, and we look into the role of having .NET as open source, I honestly believe that is to enrich and empower Azure. Okay, so the end goal is to sell more CPU time on Azure, is the way that I feel. Because if we have a great experience of .NET, the natural path to host your applications will be on Azure. So there's a flywheel that can be built here. But if .NET starts losing value to the community, eventually Azure will suffer as well. So maybe there's something to do there. And where I feel that we could learn something and try to bring here something is by looking into non-profit organizations. If we think about it, non-profit organizations like foundations, they tend to have processes in place to get funds, to have a diverse set of people around them, to rotate those that are in charge, to run the fundraising, to have transparency in place, to understand the problems, all of that stuff. And even if it's hard for for one of those organizations, one of those foundations that are non-profit, it's extremely hard for them to keep running. Maybe there's something to learn there. I don't have experience on that field, so if you have, and you can draw some bridges between these two worlds, please leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. But when I look, I like to look outside when I can't find a solution on the world that I know. Maybe there's something that we can learn with others. And I have the feeling that maybe there is where we should be looking at, and maybe we are not. I know that we have the .NET Foundation, but maybe the .NET Foundation needs to look into other ONGs and try to understand what could be done different to support .NET space. I don't know if this thing that has been happening in the recent months and past year mostly is something that is happening as well in other communities, like in Java or something like that, or in JavaScript. But if it's something that is specific to .NET, Microsoft needs to take the lead and try to change something. Because if they don't do it, no one will do it. Because in something so massive like this, you need someone with a lot of power, with a lot of initiative, with a lot of people involved to take the lead, is what I feel. And it will not be me, it will not be you, it will not be another small company, it will not be someone famous like Jimmy Bogart, it will not be something like Nick Shapsas, it will not be someone like an individual. It needs to be a huge organization trying to take us forward. And I hope that happens. I have seen some people thinking about the idea of Microsoft taking care of these projects that don't have resources. So having a way that, for example, through the foundation, I could say, okay, I can't sustain this thing. So maybe I'm delegating this to the foundation, but then it's once again creating a path to abandonware. So if I have the comfort of knowing that someone will take care of this project, if I don't want to work on it anymore, I will start creating a lot of stuff without the commitment, and that is against the spirit of open source, in my opinion. So I don't think that's the path forward. But maybe the foundation needs to do fundraising and other stuff and try to grow that way. Maybe since Microsoft controls everything from Azure, GitHub is a company from Microsoft as well, the .NET space, maybe there's something to do where funds can go from one place to another. For example, why not, I don't know, having something like a fraction of your bills through Azure being assigned to open source projects. For example, being assigned to the .NET Foundation, and then the .NET Foundation will manage that through, for example, the top 100 projects or something like that. Maybe there's something to do there. Something like if I'm using .NET technology and I'm deploying it to Azure, having something being transferred into that organization is one way, because this can't be solved with me contributing $10 a month or a company paying $1,000 per year. That is not enough. Okay? That it needs to be something a bit more massive. It needs to be something a bit more systematic. And since Microsoft controls the full stack of this open source space, I hope they have someone that is thinking about this. Because I can't see other way of moving forward in a way that .NET keeps the pace that we used to see a few months ago. Okay? Since .NET Core, this community became extremely different than it used to be, this ecosystem. And we were speeding up. It was becoming something that it was hard to understand why many companies wouldn't consider .NET as a valid option. But if we keep seeing this happening, if we keep seeing the major open source projects going commercial, being abandoned, it means that there's something wrong here. It means that we are weakening the community, and it means that many, when they evaluate .NET, they might get out of it. They might not get into the .NET space because they will not trust us. Trust us, the community, the ecosystem. And I'm concerned about that, to be honest. So what can we do now, just to finish this video? That it has been too long, I know. I usually don't do this type of videos, but I've been thinking about this for a while, and I was thinking about having this process of thinking out loud with you. Not that I will solve anything, but maybe I can put you thinking, and maybe you can share what you know, and we can start building something. I don't know. We never know. But okay, if you are an individual developer, what can you do? If you can support the projects that you love, it might be a small help, but it's something. Often the help will come, it's not about the money, is about the help that you can do. And when we can help not only with code fixes, but also trying to be more involved in the day-to-day of maintaining a project, okay? And trying to support your favorite creators. Because one of the things that I want you to remember out of this video is that on the other side, there's a maintainer that usually will see 99% of the requests will be about complaining, okay? There's a lack of appreciation. Not that you don't feel appreciation about that author or about that project, but usually we don't manifest those things. We tend to complain more than we say thank you. Okay, so tell them how much their work means to you. How, when you have a good use case, when you have something, a good story to tell, something where that library, their framework helps you a lot, share with them. Okay, they will love to hear it. Okay, it's one of those things that brings motivation and also helps to fight that burnout that starts building when you need to have your 9-to-5 job and then at night you will be maintaining open source. So it's a small way to help them out. If you are, for example, CTO of a company, if you have power to decide where the money is going through the year, it's something that I tried to advocate in the past in previous companies, of having part of the budget. It might be a small part, but having something there that can be distributed through open source projects, and try to do that in an open and transparent way. So one way that I like to do it, and I always propose to do it that way, is to either decide based on the use of the libraries inside of the company, or taking a look into the things that you are using in your day-to-day, your company is using in the day-to-day, and then ask to the team to vote for those that they believe that should get some money, and then get in touch with them and sponsor them. Okay, it's a small way to help, but if most companies do that, even if it was a small fraction of the money that is reserved for software that we buy, it would make a huge difference. And finally, if you are an author of an open source library, first thing, thank you. You are doing something amazing, something that you need to be extremely brave to do this, to be honest. I have to say that it's people like you that made this possible, that made being a .NET developer being something so pleasant, okay, so easy. So it's extremely important to have people like you. The only thing that I would ask, if I could ask something, is trying to be transparent, okay? I honestly believe that in open source, we need to be open in everything. When we start thinking about the possibility, when we start thinking about the future of the project, try to do it as open as possible, okay? Doesn't mean talking about every single thing that comes to mind, because sometimes that can lead to bringing the feeling to the community that you don't know where we are going, that the project is always at risk, that at any point it can stop. But once an idea starts forming and it starts becoming something that doesn't leave your mind, maybe it's a good idea to share that with the community. And besides that, think about if you want to go to a commercial offer, try to think about how can you sustain what you have and build on top of it, or something that I've never seen anyone thinking about it. What if instead of saying next version, this thing will be open source, maybe thinking about, okay, I'm taking the spirit of this project to open source, so I will fork it, and on that repo you can follow this new thing that will keep growing, okay? This is the baseline for that project. We are keeping it right here for you. If you want to become a maintainer, please come forward. There's no need to fork the original project to get away from us, okay? Because that project will keep existing. The thing that you are building now is the thing that will be forked, okay? It's a different approach. But above all, thank you, okay? I really appreciate your efforts, and I understand why you got here, okay? It's hard to do this for such a long time, to have the endurance of doing this for such a long time. and we need to say thank you. So I hope this was somehow helpful, and I will see you in the next one.